we're interviewing, it's the 7th of November, and if you could say your name and spell your last name for us.
My name is Joan Van Wormer, and the last name is capital V-A-N, capital W-O-R-M-E-R, but it's the last name.
It's all one word?
Yes, sometimes there's a teeny space between. It just depends how it works on the computer, I guess.
Okay, and what church are you a member of?
I am affiliated with St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in downtown Elyria.
Okay, and how did you become a member of St. Andrew's?
Well, you might say I was born there. My father came to Elyria and began his ministry on St. Andrew's Day, which was rather interesting, November 30th of 1942. So you can say that I have been there since that time. I mean, I've been away at times for college and all, but yes, that's my church home. And I can't seem to get away from it because I'm now the organist and the choir director, minister of music, and I love it.
How did you come to be the organist and choir director?
Well, when I was in the 8th grade, we thought it would be neat if I started to take organ lessons. And at that time, many of the churches in the Elyria area had organists that were studying at the Oberlin Conservatory, and we were one of those churches. And so I began with Ed Wright, and I really enjoyed it. I'd had a lot of piano background prior to that, which I think is a good thing. And at times when somebody needed to take a Sunday off, I would go and do my best. And probably the one that really got to me was an Easter day, and I don't recall the year. I might have still been in high school, but our organist did the sunrise service, and then the choir master came and said, "She is extremely ill with jaundice. Can you please get us through the second service?" And I mean, having been in the choir, I knew the music, but of course, playing all the music and getting the pedals, I probably didn't do all the pedals. But that was called on-the-job training. And I've just enjoyed it. I've had various times that I have been there as the organist because the choir master was still with us. And then when he retired, then they asked me to do both jobs. So it was rather interesting because in 1984, it was September, and our organist was with us probably about 2 years. And I think that Sunday probably was the best service she'd ever played. And afterwards, she called us all into the choir room and announced that this is my last Sunday. She did not give the rector 2 weeks, even 2 weeks notice. So of course the vestry came and said, "Joni, do you think you could help us?" I said, "Oh, I'll be glad to help until you get somebody." Well, guess what? That was in '84 and I'm still there. So we have adult choir, children's choir, chime choir, and it's exciting. I love it. I really love it. And I did 35 years of public school music, and then after that I was involved with Oberlin choristers. But I don't want to get off the subject here. Does that help?
So, what are some memorable church events that they've had in the past?
Well, I can remember that we had a very jubilant celebration of our 150th year, and now we are, in 2012, we'll have our 175th anniversary, so we're very busy in getting ready for that. And one of the things that was memorable for me was in 2009, the Oregon Historical Society has a conference, and this happened to be in Cleveland. So we were approached even 2 years prior to that to use our Aeolian Skinner organ, which is a real treasure. It has been unaltered, meaning there's been no electronic fanciness to it. And so we were one of the places that they visited, and it was very exciting our church. They were hanging from the chandeliers, really. They were sitting on the communion rail. They were sitting on the communion kneelers. And they have members of their society who volunteer, I suppose, to play the concert at the various churches. They did St. Mary's in Elyria also. So that was a real shining moment. And so we have a historic, wonderful organ. It was good publicity, and that was one of the exciting moments of the last few years that I can really remember.
What memorable events do you personally remember connected to the church?
Oh.
From the organ, that sounds like that was.
Well, that's, you know, I think noticing the changes in the services as we grew up. I don't know if I mentioned yet that my father was the rector there for 31 years, so there was a real bond. He was very musical, so we had wonderful chanting and, you know, big choirs and everything. And I remember when he would say, down the road you will notice that someday there will be women behind the rail administering communion. Of course, we never believed that. And another change that I remember was that we always had the Holy Eucharist, or the Holy Communion, the first Sunday of the month. And then the other Sundays, we had morning prayer. However, you always could have the Eucharist at an 8 a.m. service. And I remember when it was announced that we're going to have the Eucharist at every service, and oh no, it's going to take so long. And of course now, if we have a problem getting someone to come in, and when our priest had to be gone and there was nobody available, and we go back to morning prayer, which is kind of fun because those of us that remember it, they're lovely canticles and chants to be sung. And, well, how come we didn't have communion today? I really miss it. So it's a changing time. But those are things that are, as far as changes in the liturgy, which were big, which are big, and we're still changing. And of course then women priests, for us that was another big change, and we've had 2 now. So it's in the time, and we're very involved with the Diocese of Ohio. Our Trinity Cathedral is in Cleveland, and one of the things that I enjoy working on, along with family members, is the Yule Log, Boar's Head and Yule Log Festival at Trinity Cathedral, which will this year be on New Year's Eve, the 31st of December. Much pageantry, as I say, smells and bells and the whole, it's just so exciting. Costumes are beautiful, and much singing. I am a choir recruiter for that, and that's big stuff. And then Todd Wilson, who is now the organist and music director at Trinity Cathedral, is part of that. And we have 2 performances, and you know, just getting everybody rallied around and finding people to be in charge. There's some people, I remember when I first remembered about the Boar's Head, and I was in love with all the beef eaters, you know. They're gorgeous red costumes, and so the idea was, well, you don't really get into that until somebody dies, and then you might be able to take that person's place. And I thought, oh well, so that tells you how many people have been involved in the Boar's Head over the years, and we are celebrating the 49th this December. And next year will be our 50th, so that'll be special.
So you mentioned some changes in the liturgy over the years. What changes in like the musical?
Well, different chants. Some of the hymns in our 1982 hymnal did not appear in the 1940 hymnal, and for whatever reasons. And we keep trying to find new things, contemporary things to hold the interest of the young people, and it's tough in this day and age. I want to tell you too. I've experienced with, for instance, the children's choir. I never had been up against it with, and I think I can tell, where a child said, "Oh, I can't come to rehearsal because I have to be with my mom this night." Or another child, "Well, I have to be with my dad," referring to divorce and so forth. And it was a tough year. But we're coming back around now, and we have some new people. Kids are wanting to sing, so I'm feeling better about that. I think that new forms, as I say, new chants, new things written for the Holy Communion. We do a lot of things that bring the diocese to our facility because it's just a beautiful place to accommodate many people. And I usually play for the Eucharist. They begin their clergy day with that. And of course I'm always thrilled to hear all these men sing with their wonderful voices. And that's always a thrill, which was last month. So.
So you had mentioned that you'd had 2 women priests over the years.
Mm-hmm.
How has the congregation?
I think for the most part it's been pretty good. I know that there were a couple of instances where some very faithful people did not want to receive communion from a woman priest. But since they've kind of mellowed and they are coming to the rail. And this past, our present priest, this has been a new one for us, she had a baby in January, and we've never been in that situation. And this little gal, Sarah, is just precious. So we're all taking Sarah into our lives, and we love her to pieces. But, you know, I think it's been okay. We don't seem to get real caught up with a lot of what's going on in the world with the Anglican Communion and the bishop in New Hampshire that declared that he was gay and things like that. You know, we just are all children of God, and we need to be accepting. And our congregation has been very good about that. And we're still the Episcopal Church. We did not drop out and just become the Anglican Church. Because we're a worldwide communion. And we are. It's very nice when I went to England and, you know, to be able to go into St. John Cathedral or Westminster Abbey, of which I got to play the organ there. And I've never been the same since. To follow the service, and you're pretty much at home. It's all the same. And it's really neat right now because we have a curate who is like an assistant. These are some of the old English terms that are used, you know. And she's from Wales, and I love to hear her talk with her English accent. She's a delight. She's just joined us with the last couple of weeks, so we'll be enjoying having her with us.
I kind of want to hear about playing the organ at Westminster Abbey.
Well, that was quite a surprise. My sister and I took our aunt and our mother, who had an 80th birthday. That was her gift. And we went to England. Well, Aunt Betty grew up at Trinity, Toledo, where, as a side, my uncle for 17 years was the rector there. So here my grandparents had 2 Episcopal clergy people, and they were staunch Methodists. Anyway, Aunt Betty, organist at Trinity, knew Martin Neary, who was the organist at Westminster Abbey. So she was able to get a letter of introduction. And I'm going to tell you, I'm still red about it. And so it was like given to the chief wandsman, that's like a head usher. And then the time was right. And so we went up to this little door and we climbed and climbed and climbed up because the organ is, there's like a bridge across. And I didn't have any, I just kind of looked at it and I was thinking, you know, Henry Purcell and John Blow and these people who all maybe sat on this organ bench. And he said, would you like to play a little bit? And I about died. And so he put the organ on. Well, it probably was all of 2 minutes, and I'm a great lover of Bach. So I played Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. And then it was time for him to have a lesson. But I got off the bench, and I was so overwhelmed and taken that I gave him a big hug. And I think that he was red from tip to toe. And I thought I was passing the peace. So I'll never forget that. It was a real treat, and I never dreamed that that could happen.
That sounds amazing. So, at St. Andrews, what do you consider the most beautiful part of the church?
Well, the church itself is quite beautiful, and we have beautiful stained glass windows. And it's an old church. We began in 1837, and I was just rereading one of our books that someone had helped write for the 150th. And I think about these dear people. They could be 10 in number, 13, that would meet in homes and decide they wanted church. And just reading through the history of those years, which some of them were most difficult, and how the one time the vestry decided they could maybe give a horse and buggy to the priest so that he could do his pastoral care, and he would only be allowed to do it for that. And I thought, think about it, how, you know, we're all over the diocese in our cars doing everything. And some of the rectors were very concerned about finances, and they left. And so, you know, these things happen, but we've just managed to go on and on. Along with the organ, when you talk about special things about the church, we had a beautiful 12-key carillon, Deegan chime carillon, that was given to the church. And that is just, it's just beautiful. It usually, when it was working properly, because a lot of that was automatic, every 15 minutes it would chime. It would begin at 8 o'clock in the morning and end at 10 o'clock at night. And people learned to like to hear that. And when they weren't operating anymore, they missed it. And they used to say that the courthouse, which was right across the street from the church, would wait for the chimes at 9 o'clock before they would begin court. That was probably a story, but that's what I was told. The Deegan Chime Company went out of business. And so in the meantime, we've been working with a man who worked for Deegan, who's probably bought up a lot of the things from other Deegan Chime places, and he's been on top of it, and we're able to use the keyboard and play. I often try to think about the different times that the church services are about the square, so that we're not, you know, interrupting the middle of the service. But we also had a wonderful bell that was up in the tower for a long time, and they said that really early on they used to ring that bell to start court. That was another story. And then after a while, it was up there. People kind of even forgot that it was there. And I think during the war, I had heard a story about somebody wanting to, you know, bore in to see if it was copper, and that they would use it for ammunition, but that never happened. And then I can't tell you exactly the year that they took the bell out of the steeple. And actually, I think it was on loan to us, and it's part of the Historical Society. It was over in the entranceway to the administration building, and I don't think it's there anymore now. But there's just a lot of interesting little history things, you know. But I think one of the things that I remember was when this lovely lady at church left quite a sum of money for us to build on our educational wing offices. When I moved to Elyria as a child, the rectory, which was the house where the priest lived, was right next to the church, which makes sense. Well, when my dad arrived in '42, it was quite necessary to have more rooms for classrooms, a church office, and so forth. So when we moved here, the church bought a house over on Columbia in Eastern Heights, not far from here, and that was the rectory. And then they renovated the old parish house, and it was really well used. Well, now, of course, we had the big auditorium, we have classrooms, we have the choir room, we have a better sacristy, we have a huge church office, you know what I'm saying. So I'm happy to say that, you know, outreach is one of our big things right now. Maybe that's something you're going to ask me. I think of inreach and outreach, but we are really serving the community. And we have community meals, and I can't tell you how many we, and I know that Emmanuel Lutheran here is very helpful. They take one of the nights, and I've known people to come, they just had no idea that all these people needed help and food. So, of course, we hope too that we can encourage them to come to church, but that doesn't always happen. They're very comfortable. And then we have a huge pantry program. So I see classrooms that are full of this type of thing now, where I won't say that we aren't continuing with Sunday school or anything like that. We don't have as many kids right now. But this is where the shift has been. And it's good. It's good. So, and getting people involved to help. So that addition was, the addition was built. We had a wonderful garden right beside the church, and we used to have, we called them lawn fetes. Well, they were like strawberry festivals, and wonderful opportunities for the kids to play out there. But of course, that's not there anymore because there's a building there.
I'm sorry, what did you call them? Lawn?
They said lawn fete. I think F-E-T-E is, is if I remember how it was spelled, lawn fete.